Hello and welcome to Saturday Morning Cartoons, the weekly podcast that revisits, reviews, and ridicules some of the world's weirdest animated series. I'll be your host, Dave Trumbore. Joining me today from the Washington, D.C. 5-0, Sean Paul Ellis. What's going on?
David. I'm great. How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. And the Naco from the Bay Area is Matt Barron. What's up, Matt?
David, I'm just copying Sean.
Yeah, you can't do that. You can't just copy his intro, man. Come on now. You can be arrested for that in some states.
Ooh, here we go.
Yep, we're getting into it.
Right with the Central Cops theme. Wonderful.
There's really not too much I can do to tie into this. So, today, we are talking the 1988-89 DIC, or Deke, entertainment series, Cops. Now,
I feel like Deke should have been arrested for this.
Sean is getting off to an early start here with his disdain for this show. Now, I feel kind of bad because I suggested this one this week. From my childhood, I thought this one was pretty good. As we get into this one, we will reveal that it is not. So this is one of those shows that we revisit, and it is not as good as we remember.
I have to say, I kind of love to hate it.
Well, that's good.
It was bad in like a funny way.
I will 100% agree with it. Like, it was so off the wall bad that I was just like, I was enthralled to just see how many inaccuracies and just how poorly it was done, which just blew my mind. That, like, holy crap. Like, there are so many episodes of this stupid show.
Yeah, and we should say right off the bat that don't confuse this with the reality TV series Cops. With the
I
bad
kind of
boys
wish we had.
Dude, the funniest thing, and we can get into this in the history, the funniest thing is that this animated show actually came first. It was like about a year or so ahead of the reality series. But then when the reality series got more and more popular, they had to change the name of the cartoon, obviously. So a couple years later, when it went into syndication, they changed it to Cyber Cops. So you might have seen it, same exact show. They just syndicated it as Cyber Cops.
Just same terrible show. Terrible show.
But we're going to get into that in a second. Let me give you guys a little bit of history. Like I said, it was 1988 and 89 series. It was then syndicated in 1993 for CBS Saturday Morning Cartoons block, which fits in pretty well with the program here. COPS is an acronym. We all love acronyms. This one stands for Central Organization of Police Specialists. That's about as generic as you can get, I think. But
can I ask a question? Like, did anybody else hear them say that, like, during the theme song and think to yourself, like, oh my god, is that really what COPS means? Like, is it? Have I just thought that it was like a word all the time, and I didn't realize it was an acronym? Like, am I stupid?
When I heard that, I also thought, oh my god, some police department is actually using this in real life. Like, this is happening right now.
Yeah, very much so. I don't know why they felt that.
To answer my question, I'm not stupid. This show is stupid.
Yeah, the show is very stupid. But everything in like the late 80s had to be anachronized.
An acronym?
An anachronistic acronym. Wow. Yeah, pretty bad. So it also has a toy line tie-in. It was tied into the Hasbro Cops and Crooks series. So that's where a lot of these bizarro characters come from, which we'll get into. That's actually probably why I remember this show fondly, because I just remember the characters and not any of the dialogue or plot or ridiculousness that was in the show itself. But yeah, there it is. One cool thing for fans of animation, especially fans of the show Aeon Flux, which we will probably talk about someday, because I think it's still fairly obscure for a lot of people. South Korean artist by the name of Peter Chung was actually responsible for the character design, the opening title direction, which I love, and then also supervised the overseas animation on Cops. Did a number of other animated things, but was the creator and director for the Aeon Flux series. So when you go to look at Cops and you look at the characters, they have sort of these like weird angles on their faces and just like very just kind of like stark expressions on their faces. Big eyes, very, very characteristic of his animation style. And you can see that again in Aeon Flux. It's not quite as angular as that, but
and I mean, like, I love Peter Chung's work. I mean, Aeon Flux on Liquid Television on MTV in the 90s was just incredible. And then he did a bit on the Animatrix,
right?
And he also did like the Chronicles of Riddick, like, animated movie that serves as like a segue between like the
interstitial chapters,
Pitch Black and Chronicles of Riddick, called Dark Fury, which is phenomenal to watch. Like, I love it. But man, Peter Chung, like, you made a mistake, buddy. Like, you are an amazing artist, but not everybody is perfect.
Well, look, I'll tell you what. I'll give him props for the opening title sequence, which is pretty badass. And it ran obviously for the the show's 65 episodes. So That was pretty
Wow.
memorable, and we'll talk about it. But as for what the show is actually about, I'm going to turn it over to Matt, who's going to give you a little bit of background.
Okay, so the synopsis, and Dave, the tagline you
Oh
sent
yeah,
out: fighting crime in a future time,
it's
protecting Empire City from Big Boss and his gang of
and
crooks.
that future
I
time's
mean,
coming up, 2020, y'all.
I know, and that's what kind of geeks me out. I was like, oh my God, 6 years. Like, everything's going to be terrible 6 years from now. Like, there's going to be bad animation. The plots are going to take a turn for the worse.
Everybody's going to be a terrible trope of a police officer.
It's just going to be like a really like low budget rendition of like Blade Runner. I feel like,
We're headed in that direction.
great.
So says
So
cops.
anyway,
Yeah.
so the Nexus 6 situation, but I digress. So yeah, it was year 2020, place Empire City. So basically, the Mayor Davis requests federal assistance from the FBI, which I thought was a little weird. Like, if you're gonna, make this in the 2020 future, especially from writing this in 1989,
Right.
you should have there has to be something better than the FBI 40 years in the future if it's 1989. But it was. Basically, it was a focusing on Special Agent Baldwin Vess, and it was just basically cops, except instead of reality TV show, it was an acronym. So.
Yeah, but it was also just like crazy cybernetically enhanced, like biosuit cops kind of thing. Not as crazy as like Exo Squad or stuff that we've seen, and not like a RoboCop, but pretty close. Yeah.
You know what it kind of reminded me of was 8-Man a little bit.
What is that?
It was if you remember on Saturday Anime on the Sci-Fi Channel, like back in the 90s, it was a lot of like cybernetic enhancement, not really Ghost in the Shell style,
Okay.
but sort of the same umbrella. It kind of reminded me of that. Like the animation style was similar, so.
This to me would be like if you explained what the idea was for Ghost in the Shell, and then someone pretended to understand it, and then just made a show.
Yeah,
Somebody-
this,
Based on
this
their
was
misunderstanding.
this
wa-
was Ghost in the Shell.
Yeah,
and Ghost
somebody
in the
walked
Shell
in
was
halfway
Perp
through and
Derp.
said, "Oh, I got that. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh
I'll
yeah.
draw
Sure.
this up right now."
Yeah. That's great. So we should probably get into some of these characters because their names say it all. And like we've talked about on past shows, for like 80s characters, their names at some point they don't even try. Whoever's dreaming up these characters, they don't even try. It's just for dumb kids. It's a really quick and easy name that their name describes exactly what they do and exactly what they look like. So it's kind of fun. So you want to go through some of the hero cops first, starting with, as Baron mentioned, Mr. Vess. Vess. Vess.
Baldwin Bulletproof Vest.
Oh yeah, bulletproof vests, everyone.
I think the thing. The
Sets
thing
the
that
bar.
the thing,
Wait a minute. I literally just got that. Holy
Are
crap.
you
Oh,
serious?
come on.
Jesus, dude.
Sorry.
Well, while Baron collects his thoughts, maybe Sean will tell us why he's named Bulletproof Vest, other than the obvious pun, or not so obvious pun.
Got a cybernetic torso that allows him to walk or some crap.
Yeah,
I
makes
don't know.
no sense.
You know,
Again, cartoon
it's-
logic. I don't know why your torso is needed to help you walk. Spine, I get. Spine makes sense. Legs,
So like if you're,
perhaps.
yeah, but maybe spine. Who knows? Doesn't matter. I think the thing that's key with this is that like there are a bunch of different like cops of these specialized cops.
Yes.
And like if you're super interested in learning all about them, either Google them or just watch to the end of the episode and they do like a major roll call
I
and
love
go
that.
through what everybody is, because there's just so many, like there's so many characters that they have for this. They also do like a whole roll call of all the different crooks
Yep.
that are on it too. So like if you're really super interested, but just looking at this episode, the only people that like you need to really concern yourself with are Bulletproof, Long Arm,
Who's probably my favorite.
I don't like any of them.
Yeah, I know you don't like
I really
So-
I love
think
his
I-
name, though.
I think I like a hard top, and I'll explain
God
why.
damn, how could you? Okay.
I'll explain why later. All right, so Long Arm is supposed to be like a beat cop. He's got like this like grappling hook, kind of like a bionic
Yeah,
commando
he's got
thing.
the long arm of the law, my friends.
dumb.
The long arm of the law. It's a power cuff. So it's like a handcuff grappling hook combined. And there's one scene in a later episode where there's two of these cops side by side. They use no less than 3 grappling hooks, including the long arm of the law. which was just fantastic. We mentioned this on oh man, I don't even remember what episode it was now, but everybody had grappling hooks in the 80s. Every action hero had a grappling hook. So cops had 3 between 2 people. So there you go.
So there were 3 other major cops that were in this episode. There was Highway, which he obviously represents a highway patrolman. And then there was a guy that was named Mace, which
Mace was basically, and I read this in some comments, somebody was like really excited the fact that they figured out that Mace is basically Tackleberry from the Police Academy series, because he's really nervous around women, but he's kind of like a jackass just around the other cops, and he loves guns. He just loves a big gun, so he's Tackleberry.
Yeah, he represents like SWAT.
Yeah.
Like special weapons and tactics.
He kind of looks like, the funny thing though, he looks like a hunter. Like he's wearing like orange, like bright orange vests and hats. He just looks like a hunter that just walked into a police station. Pretty strange.
And so then the guy who is the all these people have like, these are all of their nicknames. We should preface this with like everybody has like a specific nickname, and their nickname is like their job.
Right.
All right.
Except for Bullseye, who flies a helicopter, and it makes no sense. But whatever, I digress.
Yeah, it doesn't. So these people all have actual like character names, but they're just called by like their code name or whatever. And so the first episode, the case of the stuck-up blimp.
Oh yeah.
It kind of follows that of one of the cops named Hardtop, who his real name is. Just wait for this because it's so perfect.
So good.
Donnie Brooks.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Donnybrook. Did you get that one, Matt? You still with us on that one? The old Donnybrook? No? You puzzling through that one?
All right.
No, I got it. Yeah.
Mulling that over. So it's so many cop ideas and
just
like
tropes
jokes and inside jokes,
tired jokes.
Shoehorned like in.
I'm surprised
Shoehorn
wasn't a name of a cop on this show, actually.
Yeah, he easily could have been. So these are really the only if you're
old Shoehorn Callahan, right?
If you're jumping into like this first episode, like those are the only cops that you need to really concern yourself with.
And the other guys are kind of like floating around the precinct. They're around the office. Like there's a couple lady cops. Kind of get rough treatment from these idiots. There's one guy who's like decked out in body armor and has a bionic dog for whatever reason. He's pretty cool too. But
I mean, he's just supposed to be the canine officer. Like, his name's Bowser, and he's got a dog named Blitz.
And one of the most random ones is probably this guy's Sundown. Now, I don't remember him from the show. I didn't watch any episodes with him, but he's basically a cowboy. So he's like a Wild West sheriff. He comes in, kind of like the handlebar mustache, the actual cowboy hat, bandana, the whole works. They have no dress code here at Cops. Sundown.
It did seem pretty casual.
Yeah, it's business cash. Wear your bulletproof vest, wear your hunting gear, whatever you want.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it like, hey, look, whatever you want to wear to get the job done, that's what you can wear in Empire City. Like, there are no rules.
Yeah. No, there's literally no rules. And half the reason there are no rules
in this stupid
is
city
because Big Boss, the crime lord of Empire City, and his cronies have basically taken over everything. Like Matt said in the beginning, like the mayor of Empire City was just kind of like fed up with it. He couldn't handle it with just like the regular beat cops. So he brought these idiots in. But the criminals are equally ridiculous.
Which makes me think, like, how bad were the cops that were in Empire City?
Dude,
they were just like, ooh, like, they're not working out.
It was the same cops
and I also feel like there was a pretty sharp tipping point there, where there wasn't, like, any escalation process. It wasn't like, well, things are getting a little dicey. Cops can't really handle it.
Maybe we should head this off at the pass. Nah, just let it till it boils over.
Let's bring just a couple FBI people in. Like, no, we need full FBI bomb drop. There was absolutely no escalation. It was cops suck, FBI.
I love the vetting process for this too. Like, what do we got? We got a guy with a cybernetic torso. That's good. He can lead the team. We got a guy with a really long handcuff. That'll work. That's fine. We got a guy who thinks he's a sheriff from San Antonio, so what the hell, we'll bring him in. Just like, what is this process here? What do you people bring to the table? But it makes sense when you look at the crooks, because these guys are equally just ridiculous. You want to start with Big Boss? It's probably a good place to start. Now, when you see this guy, you think like Punisher, or not Punisher, Kingpin. Kingpin is what I'm thinking of. You kind of think Kingpin. You think a little bit of a Godfather thing. He's got this weird cat-like creature on his desk. Yeah.
But he is the worst Bugsy Malone.
It's so bad.
Yeah, see,
Yeah.
we're gonna be able to steal all the loot. See, like, shut up.
That's terrible.
I also love
Shut your
that
mouth.
Crooks was an acronym too.
Oh, I missed that. Was that for the toy line? What the hell did they
Yeah.
make Crooks? You have to enlighten me with that one. Are you
Uh,
making that up? You making that up?
Wikipedia tells me that it is
Crazy,
so-
racist.
Please don't. Please don't try
I
to
should
come
just
up
stop.
with-
Let's just stop there.
oily. Yeah.
All right,
Yeah, we'll come
now-
back with
now
the
look-
second half of
now
that in a
look
later
up.
episode.
All right.
But no,
There,
they're
look it up
basically
right
like the
now.
cops of Empire City are like the cops of Saint Canard. Like they're equally as inept as the cops in like every other cartoon show we've talked about so far. So it makes sense that they kind of pit these idiots against each other and hope that they'll just like stay out of the way. 'Cause they're
Okay,
equally
like
as bad.
I want to get into this
Do
topic
it.
as we're kind of talking about these Crooks characters. Okay, like one of the big taglines that they have for the show is "Fighting crime in a future time."
You got it.
All right, and I know that they peg the date is like 20, like is it
It's
2020?
2020.
2020. All right. Why are all of the crooks stuck in the 30s? Like they all say stuff like loot and get your mitts up.
Get your mitts up.
And,
Yeah, it's all that kind of.
hold it there, coppers.
It's very much like a
and
Bugs Bunny, the Maroons kind of like way of
my
talking, and they're very
Uh,
much. Now I like that though because
knuckle sandwich,
Bunch of knuckleheads.
slap foot.
I like it though
Like,
because it's
they-
that
the way they
slapstick
were-
kind of character. It's that 30s kind of like Depression era gangster kind of vibe to most of it, but it's brought into like the 80s, 90s. Well, technically 2020 with like the future tech. All right, so the future tech. I like that. It's terrible.
But I mean, like
but
the
I like
only
it.
future you realize the only future tech that is in this show is BP's chest
And a handcuff. Don't forget the handcuff.
and the hand. I mean, come on. I mean, it's tertiary at this point. It's like a stupid piece of nothing.
Pretty
Like
much.
it's really the only thing that they have that is like actually like, hey, we are in the future right
Well,
now.
I'll tell you
Is
what,
like this
steroids-
cybernetic.
Steroids have
Wow.
run rampant in here. So there's Big Boss, who like we already kind of explained him. You can probably have a good picture in your head of him. Now, like Sean mentioned with the cops, there's only a handful of cops you need to know for the first episode. There's only a handful of crooks you need to know for the first episode, and they are equally ridiculous. Their names are terrible. I don't know if they have actual names too. I didn't see that, but their like tag names are awful. But there's basically like 3 henchmen that work for Big Boss, and these guys
And, like,
try to
they-
pull
they-
something off. And they don't have real names. These are their
And
actual names.
yeah, they only want like they have to most of them in some way have to be like alliterative, like Brandon Big Boss Babble.
Yeah, but he's the only one. Nobody else has a real name, as far as I know.
Oh well, I mean, there's Turbo Two Tone.
Oh yeah, Turbo Two Tone.
There's Turbo Two Tone who's in this first
Did
episode.
they explain
who
why
is-
he's named Turbo Two Tone?
Yeah, because he's always the getaway driver and everything, and so like he's turbo. He
I
drives
get the
cars. and
turbo.
crap.
I'm not getting
Was
the
the
two.
was the two tone? Yeah, the two tone makes
It's
zero
like
sense
fashion,
whatsoever.
a
So,
fashion thing.
no, if you're trying to read far into this, like
You
you're
always
doing yourself
stop
a
me from
disservice.
doing
Like,
that.
just stop it. Just knock it off. Like there's Buttons McBoom Boom.
Oh,
He's
don't
not in
even
this
get to him
episode,
yet.
but,
Yeah,
like,
yeah, don't get to
I
him.
feel
He's
like
got-
that's an actual like 30s crime era person that might have been actually real.
He
I mean,
might be
just-
the best character on this show. Might be the
Yeah,
best character on the show.
I mean, like. But
Wait a minute. What
suffice
about
it to
Dr.
Say,
Bad Vibes?
Jesus, he's
Sean's getting so upset.
Show is frustrating.
What was the name of the What was the name of the creepy like organ exposed doctor from Botsmaster that we talked about? Because these two are basically like twins. They both have like weird clear like coverings over their organs. So like his Dr. Bad Vibes' brain is exposed, and he wears like Elton John sunglasses for God knows what reason.
Doctor, you were talking about Dr. Hiss?
Yes, Dr. Hiss. So like
Dr.
Dr.
Hiss
Hiss,
from
Doc
Botsmasters?
Terror, and Dr. Bad Vibes need to get together.
Sean.
So bad.
God,
So bad.
so bad. So in this episode,
The heavies.
there's Big Boss.
Right.
There is Berserko,
Mhm.
who always gotta talk like this. It's
Let that
the
name
worst.
sink in for a second too.
I
Berserk.
hate Berserko. He is evidently like he is the nephew of Big Boss. So like he only has this job through nepotism.
Right.
There's a dude who's like his actual name in this show is just Rock Crusher
Yep. With a K, so I mean it's still
with a
kind of.
K.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, totally. And then,
I
That
will-
kind of
Yeah.
that got like the whole bebop and rocksteady
Yes,
thing
yeah,
very
from
much.
like I was like, yes, excellent port over.
I do have to correct this real quick. Berserko's actual name is Barney L. Fotheringhouse, apparently. I'm going from Wikipedia, so who knows? Somebody could have just like written in whatever the hell they wanted. Rock Crusher's name is Edmund Scary, because of course it is. And Turbo Two Ton's name is Ted Stavely, which is actually relatively normal for the show. So there you go. Very, very important information for you. So there you go.
So, I mean, again, there's like a whole ton of other crooks and other cops that you can read about, but these are the only people you need to concern yourself with this. If you're deciding to make the mistake and waste 25 minutes to watch this first episode, these are the only jerks that you have to deal
I'll tell
with.
you what. Here, we'll save you. Now we're going to talk about the episode for the next 10 minutes or so, but I will save you the trouble of watching this, or even listening to us, whatever. But if you go and watch the theme song, which I want to talk about next, awesome theme song, awesome title sequence. And then if you watch the end credits, skip the whole show, it just rolls through, like Sean said, the roll call of all the cops, and kind of shows a little like action montage of them, and the crooks too. So you get to know everybody right at the end there, and it's great. And you only waste about 3 minutes of your time, and it's great. You get the whole sense of the show. Do you guys want to talk about anything else about the characters you want to mention before we actually move on to this first episode? Jesus, Sean's ready to just roll through it.
Although I did get kind of a laugh out of Ms. Demeanor.
Ms. Demeanor's so good.
Yeah.
It's the
I
cleverest
was just
of the
waiting for
names,
some kind of like felonious assault kind of poured over, but
that was like
a
Carmen Sandiego villain, you know?
Wait, was it?
I mean, it might have been. They had all those similarly named villains, but yeah. So Misdemeanor, just as a side note, she's like this middle-aged businesswoman, but is like a bodybuilder, like a female bodybuilder, and she just like in the opening sequence, she just lifts one of the cops' cars and throws it 3 stories in the air until it lands on like an overpass. So that's what's going on there. So that's
dear God.
Yeah, good stuff.
But I digress.
Now let's get into the episode itself. How do you guys feel about the theme song, which is pretty much all instrumental, and the title sequence? Because that is 99% of what I remember as a kid.
I mean, again, like Peter Chung, directed this, and I mean, like I actually, I mean, like it does do a good job of like incorporating and putting like all these different characters together. Right. So like if you're trying to get like a quick like summary of like how this show is going to work, and especially like what the specific skills of each cop is,
right,
then this does a really good job of kind of like filling you in on those details and giving you like a very quick summary.
Yeah, no exposition. You get to see it acted out.
Yeah,
and you just
and I
there's
keep
some
having like the
music to it.
Like in the back of my head. Like,
it definitely sticks with you, and it's awesome.
Yeah, it's good.
And it's shot in like a really cool kind of way. It actually reminded me, I don't want to compare it directly, but it reminded me of the opening sequences for Batman the Animated Series. Very, very different style, but same kind of like that instrumental overture and that kind of like action-y tone. It gives you a real sense of what the tone of, in this case, this piece of shit is going to be.
I feel like I want you to take that back.
You want to take it back?
It's not
it's a complimentary comparison because I do love the theme song and the title sequence, and then I was grossly disappointed when I actually watched a couple of these episodes.
Well, I mean, let's get into it. So this.
Well, how do all these?
This was the case of the stuck-up blimp.
Yes, and that's an interesting point because how do all of these episodes start?
They always start with BP just going like, "This is the case of the stuck-up blimp," and you're like, I can read dumb.
He lists, on screen. There's like a manila folder with a case number stamped onto it. So he reads that for whatever reason because they're not in order. He's not like, this is case number 1. He's like, this is case 2676, and then he just case of the stuck-up blimp, and then he has some terrible joke.
Did anybody think for like 2 seconds that this was like a really sassy, like full of attitude blimp?
The blimp itself?
Yeah.
I didn't put that much thought into it.
It was a real stuck-up, like, catty blimp, and I was like, oh, why did they personify a blimp in this episode?
I mean, the people kind of stuck-up blimp.
I do kind of like the whole, like, future blimp kind of thing from the blimps? 80s, Yeah, it was like the whole Zeppelin-style future with, like, planes are going to take a backseat to other different types of air travel. Dirigible. Exactly. Yeah.
But no,
you can call it like a Zeppelin or something like that. Like there was
Stuck-up Zeppelin didn't sound quite the same. But I do like the titles. I love how they work these like terrible puns in here because obviously it's a stick-up robbery. But then, like Sean said, stuck-up. So he's joking about the blimp. But I mean, this thing is populated with like the hoity-toity blue bloods of Empire City, Correct. We're getting a little ahead of ourselves because what do the crooks need to do first before they can think about robbing this?
They start off, like, as Dave, as you said, like, BP starts off with that little bit of exposition. He just goes, this was a daring robbery, even for Big Boss.
Dude, and he's got the guy
in the light of day. And I was like, if you watch the episode, you realize that the robbery takes place at night. So
I don't know why these details bother Sean.
Inconsistency number one that drove me bananas. I watched this episode twice, and when I rewatched it, I was like, God, I hate you, BP. Like you are like. Here's the thing: if your job is to accurately report that in a report because you're a police officer representing the FBI, you've made a grievous error.
Yeah, and he's in charge of the whole thing, by the way.
Like,
Let's keep.
You stink.
He's in charge of everything. Who's running this show? Yeah.
Nobody. Nobody's running this show whatsoever.
It's their first time out.
It's possibly the worst mismanaged police department in the history of crime. So.
Yeah, because after 65 episodes, they don't manage to actually like subdue any of these people. They just keep breaking out and doing more crimes. So there you go. So we already mentioned that Big Boss is kind of like obviously the big boss of the show, and he wants to pull off a heist, which is, robbing everybody that's on this blimp. So what is his crazy cockamamie scheme?
Do it in Big Boss's
Yeah,
voice.
see, we're gonna rob that blimp. See, yeah. And he's got this like creepy weird cat thing on his lap that is later revealed to be a robotic flying weasel, which I'm not even making that up. I don't think I could
Scratch.
Named Scratch.
Yeah, for real.
Robotic flying weasel. So there you go.
So dumb.
Now, Sean, maybe this is a good time for you to tell us about your buddy Hardtop and why you like this character, who I absolutely loathe.
Well, let me get into it in just a little bit. I will say that the reason that I enjoy and that I really like Hardtop, and I'll begin to, as we talk about the episode, cite those specific examples, is that he is just like a manic depressive. I mean, he just like he fucking hates himself. Like he fucking hates himself and just like anything that's around him. Like he's like that guy that you're just like, hey, really nice shirt, and just be like, it's not my favorite. And like, just shut up, Eeyore.
He's the Eeyore, exactly. He's the Eeyore of the group.
Of this dumb show.
I don't know. Does he have any like actual? He doesn't have a long cuff. He doesn't have a bulletproof chest. What does he do? Does he do anything other than just moan all the time?
He just complains. He's he's like the constant complainer of everybody that's in this group.
Well, that makes sense. Why
he's
you
unnecessary.
Like him. Okay, now I get it.
Wait, what?
Wait, huh? Continue.
Yeah, but he really doesn't have like
any friends.
He has zero. He has like this weird gun thing that's on his hand, like that's on his arm. Like in the first scene, he has like this it looks like a little pistol that's on his arm, and when you see that when you see that Berserko and Turbo Two Top are robbing it,
let me just correct that because I need to correct that because it's not for listeners at home. It's not Turbo Tube Top. It's Turbo Two Tone. That's a very different show. That is like the Rocky Horror Picture version of this show.
I was just kind of thinking, what kind of world would a Turbo Tube Top exist in?
Probably the same world. Let's be honest.
So the cops are going.
Yeah, actually, that does kind of fit pretty well.
So the cops are going to this charity event, and so Hardtop is picking up a tuxedo, and he's walking out of the tuxedo store, and this guy who works at this fancy gentleman comes out, and he's like, "Officer, you forgot something. No tux is complete without a top hat." And drops it on top of his head, which is inconsistency number 2 because he never wears that top hat when he gets to the.
Well, I'll tell you what, this entire tuxedo subplot was the one thing that stuck with me because they never come back to it again. So Hardtop goes in there, gets his tux, gets accosted by this very friendly tuxedo shop owner. At which point the 3 heavies show up because they have to get their own tuxes too, right?
Well, it was just the 2 of them. It was just Berserko.
It was only the 2, and then
the Rock Crusher didn't come with them on this one. I don't know why I'm defending them.
I don't either.
This is dumb.
I don't either.
No, but what was it? Hardtop is outside, and he's just oh, these people look familiar, but he doesn't ID them based on. I mean, these crooks are not hiding in any way, shape, or form.
No, they're basically wearing their former prison costumes. Their prison uniforms. You might as well just walk out in the arm shackles and chains and just have a sack of money with a dollar sign and a mask on.
The character Rock Crusher basically does. Yeah. He's wearing the black and white stripes.
Yeah, we're not making that up. That's what they're wearing.
And he has manacles on his wrists. These guys aren't trying to be criminals. They're basically trying to get put back into the system.
The worst
I think
part
this show is more of a desperate cry for these guys just to be can you look. I was released on bail, and I honestly cannot deal with the stresses of the outside world. Like, keeping a job is challenging, keeping up with personal appearances and relationships is challenging. If you put me back in prison, things will make much more sense to me. Please lock me up. Because
really did kind of have that Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah, that is the. Oh my God, that is
I wanted
a
to
very
Shawshank
generous
every
comparison.
single one of these jerks. Like, it's just terrible.
Well, that would have been doing way better cop work than Hardtop was, because how does he actually ID these idiots as they're stealing tuxes?
He punches in an ID code into his computer that pulls up, and he's able to immediately identify them and just be like, oh, these are crooks.
His car goes through this bizarro face matching scheme where it splits the face into 3 bars, almost like a slot machine, and it matches their eyes with their nose with their mouth until it comes up with both of these guys' identities. And he's like, oh, Rock Crusher and Turbo Two-Tone. It's or whoever it was. Yeah. Berserko and Turbo Two-Tone.
Turbo Tube-Top.
Turbo Tube-Top.
Turbo Tube-Top. So they go through this whole at that time when he finally identifies them,
yes.
They rob this tuxedo store that Hardtop had just come out of.
Right.
Here's the thing, is that Hardtop's not hiding, and Berserko and Turbo Tube Top aren't hiding either. I'm just gonna say that.
Yeah, might as well.
So they're not hiding. Nobody's hiding in this whatsoever. Nope. Hardtop identifies them. They don't see a cop standing outside of the place because they remark on it later, and they're like, what are the chances that the one tuxedo place that we hold up, it has a cop outside?
As they're running.
Are you fucking kidding me?
But this is great because we get to see our first cops and robbers chase since the opening title sequence 30 seconds before. So that's a lot of fun. We get to see them kind of parkour their way across some building tops.
Across the building, which is where you find out that Hardtop, he's deathly afraid of heights.
And this is where I kind of gave up and realized that my childhood was wrong and I was remembering it incorrectly.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It was
man.
quite wrong. Dude.
It was very wrong. Very wrong on so many levels.
And they do this fun 80s Vertigo music where it's it's just it's so bad. So he chases Hardtop chases them. They manage to escape, and before they escape, does anybody remember what Turbo says to Berserko?
Oh my God, I can't even. Honestly, I should have written their dialogue down because it was all terrible. It's all these awful one-liners and puns.
I think I might have fast-forwarded through that part.
It's probably a good idea.
He just go good. It's perfect. They are in earshot of the cop. It's not like they're trying to have an aside or a duck blind in any way. Turbo just looks at them and just goes, "We got to go rob a blimp." Or we got a blimp to rob.
Oh yeah, he straight up tells them their plans.
Straight up
so he doesn't do any cop work. He punches
I love how nobody puts that together as well.
It takes him a very long time.
I just got a tuxedo for a blimp event tonight. Blimp to rob. Huh.
I wonder if there's a connection. Mercy.
Yeah.
So this was the best. This is the funny thing. I don't know if you guys noticed this. Was that between the moment where Turbo and Berserko leave, Hardtop stranded on top of this building, scared of heights.
Right.
There is a very special wipe that goes between those two scenes that I didn't see in any other of the episodes that I watched.
Really? Is it the badge?
No, it's the badge. But there's this sensual kind of voice that just goes, "Cops."
That's right.
Goes,
that's right.
Cops. What the hell
I forgot about that.
is going on? It doesn't happen in any, I've watched 2 or 3 episodes. It didn't happen in any of the other episodes, but it just goes. It's like a star wipe with a badge, and it just goes.
It was that chick from Bots Master that was doing the sexy voice the whole time.
Oh yes,
yeah.
Lady Frenzy.
Oh God, what's
Lady
her name?
Frenzy would have worked in perfectly with these villains that they have here. It would have been perfect.
So they transition back to the cops' home base
through this sexy badge wipe. Yeah.
Through the cops, and so they if we haven't convinced you at this point that these are not only the shittiest cops in the world, all right. It cuts to Long Arm
back at the station
with his legs up on a desk, and he's playing Arkanoid on a computer. He's not doing any work. They're all sitting around what are we gonna do today? Maybe fight some crime. Who knows? They're not doing a fucking thing. These guys just, I'm so angry.
But on the plus side, we do get to find out more about Hardtop's man pain. So that's always fun.
which this is the best part, is that
You
in
love
this
this
scene,
show. You
no,
secretly love this show.
no, I agree with Baron. Like this show was so bad
Yes.
that I did enjoy parts of it. Like I enjoyed looking for these inaccuracies. And Mace just goes at one point. Hardtop is very excited about going on this charity event.
They're going undercover to
because
the charity event, right?
Reporter Whitney Morgan.
Oh, she's a cutie.
She is evidently the best-looking reporter. Cops. Yeah.
Cops.
She's super sexy reporter. She's the April O'Neil
Exactly.
of Empire City, and she's gonna be there. And so Mace is like giving
Windy?
Hardtop has given Mace Mace is giving Hardtop a hard time, and he goes, I heard Whitney Morgan only goes for big tough cops in uniform. And this is my favorite line of the whole
That was real
episode,
good.
where Hardtop just turns and he goes, well, I guess that leaves me out.
It's just like,
Like-
wah, wah, wah. He's just got
You
this
realize
gray
before-
cloud that just rains down over him.
Before the badge
Seriously.
wipe, he was a big, tall cop in uniform. Like, he was on top of a building. Granted, he's scared of heights, and he's a little bit upset about that.
Yep.
But, I mean, like, he fits that to a T. And he is a gentleman. You do find out
He
later
is
on.
quite the gentleman. Yes.
Yes.
Quite
So-
the gentleman.
Yeah,
Quite
I mean, you know,
gentleman.
Sean, it's kind of funny that you bring that up because that kind of hits like the nail on the head for some of these inaccuracies because it's like, you know, something happens in like scene B that directly contradicts the thing that happened in scene A
Right.
Yeah.
right before it.
Oh, yeah.
So it was kind of like, you know, when you're looking at like an episode, like, you know, start to finish, did anybody talk to each other during the production of that
Doubtful.
episode?
No, I mean,
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
people wrote this as like a one-line story, just like passing it around the room. They're like, you add to it, but don't read what was
Yeah.
before.
Well, in
Don't worry,
case
you'll
in
figure
point,
it
so
out.
now we've talked about...
It's that and then.
And
And
yeah,
then-
Dave, I know exactly what
So
you're gonna
yeah,
hit
so
on
now to this point we've talked about there's a lot of stuff revolving around tuxes, right? Like you think the rest of the show going forward would involve at least tuxes in the frame at some point. So
I mean, they pulled off a successful tux caper.
yeah, great. I mean, great job, crooks. Terrible job, cops, because you guys are already down one because they stole a bunch of tuxes. Well, we cut to these crooks who are now like getting ready to board the blimp, or they're on board the blimp and they're ready to rob everybody. Cut to the night, even though it was a daytime robbery according to Bulletproof Vest, and
The worst.
the three thugs are in there now, and they're just like, man, Big Boss had a much better plan than them stupid tuxes. Now we work for the caterers. And it's just like, well, what the fuck just happened then? You went through all of this for the last 10 minutes, steal these tuxes, make fun of Hardtop, and elude him on the rooftop chase, just to throw the tuxes out and just go in for the catering instead. So,
And 2 seconds later,
Yeah,
they
because-
crap on Hardtop again because he's in the elevator going up to the.
this was the
to
best
blimp.
best piece of police work by Bulletproof Vest. He looks over at Hardtop, who looks like he's about
Yeah.
to vomit his dinner up, and he's like, "How long you been scared of heights?" And it's just like, "Wow, well done, detective. You were clearly."
No, but I mean, did you know? Do you remember the line that he said?
No.
He goes, "How long have you known?" And he goes,
long have you
"I can
known?"
tell." He goes, "I can tell by the fear in your eyes." Shut up.
Of all the damn things, you didn't know. You
You
didn't
got a
know that
cybernetic
these guys
body,
were
not
gonna.
cybernetic eyes. Ass.
And he's got shades on too, so who even knows? You didn't know that these three thugs and Big Boss are gonna rob this blimp full of rich people, even though they flat out told you we got a blimp to rob. But you do notice that Hardtop has been scared of heights for a very long time, only in this instance. So that's good to know. That's good police work there. So these goobers, who is it? It's just Bulletproof Vest and Hardtop, right? That's pretty much it.
Rock Crusher.
No,
Because,
well, I mean,
'cause
on the,
remember,
on the cop side, on the cop side.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just the two of
So
them.
it's just
sorry.
those two, and then the other three are getting ready to rob the place,
Berserko, Turbo, and
Crusher,
Rock Crusher.
right. Who stick out like a sore thumb in this place. So everybody there is like, millionaires or billionaires or whatever. They're all walking around like showing. I love the montages of showing how rich they were, because they're like showing off all their jewelries. There's literally a scene where a guy just opens his wallet and thumbs through about $1 million worth of bills.
Yeah.
For like
Insane.
5 seconds. I don't know how he got that many in there.
Insane.
Insane amount of money. So they're basically just acting
That
like they
wallet,
want to be
that
robbed.
wallet, like defied physics
Oh, yeah.
in terms of like the billfold that was inside.
You
of
could
it.
make
like,
it-
It was the,
endless
the
gift of
classic George Costanza wallet.
It very much was. Just instead of coupons, it was just $100
$100
bills, yeah,
bills.
constantly. You can make an endless GIF of that, and it would just go on forever. Have all the money you ever need. But my God, then it runs through like, well, okay, let's get to the meet cute of the reporter and Mr. Hardtop here. He has a hard time with with his little meat cube.
Right. So Whitney Morgan is asking a wait staff person who is being played by Rock Crusher like what the sandwiches are, and she asks like what he's serving, and and he doesn't know and he doesn't care. He just wants to eat these sandwiches.
He's not a
and,
very
like,
convincing
and case,
caterer.
and,
He's just like,
yeah, he's not.
what do I
He
look like?
Just wants the case. He just wants the case the joint.
Yeah.
And like, what was it? And so he kind of like brushes off Whitney Morgan, and then Hardtop is just like, "Hey, she wanted to know what you're serving." And he goes,
Yeah.
"I'm not serving anything. I'm on parole."
Which was
Like,
that was a great
what?
line. Great line. I loved it. I love that line. That might have been the smartest bit of writing in the entire series. But yeah, that was good stuff.
Don't give them any credit.
Yeah, give them all the credit.
So so they have this interaction, which is how they're able to introduce Whitney Morgan
Yes.
and Hardtop together.
Yes.
And Whitney in this moment, she just goes, "Hey, I'm onto a story." And I was like, what story? There's been like no
Nothing's going
story. She's got like a hot tip that she hasn't shared in any of this witty exposition that's gone on so far. She's just got like a hunch about nothing. And then 2 seconds later, her camera bot comes over to her and is just like, "I set up an interview." And she's like, "Oh, gotta go, bye."
Gotta go, and just like rides her creepy
pieces off.
camera robot off into the sunset. Yeah, very strange. We're getting a little short on time, so I want to get through the rest of this episode because they definitely get through some bizarre fight sequences that, you know, it gives Hardtop a chance to kind of like obviously overcome his fear of heights and obviously impress the little lady. But we should probably talk about just like, god damn, the awful like one-liners and stuff they throw back and forth. And we should talk about Bulletproof and whatever the hell his issue is. Because I have no clue how this guy functions on like daily life.
No, I mean, I really like. So, long story short for this episode. All right, Hardtop and Bulletproof get captured, thrown in like a meat locker,
Yep, chill out.
and escape. To realize that like the crooks are now they've rounded up all the loot and they are getting ready to. They have a bag of loot, and then Rock Crusher wanted a bag,
This is the best.
a doggy bag full of all the sandwiches that they had.
Yep.
So
now you got two identical bags.
So just keep this in mind. They've got these two identical bags, all right, which is going to come into play later. So they do this whole thing where, like, when BP and Hardtop escape, they call for backup. And so the rest of the cops show up, all right, and they confront all the other, like, crooks. Like, they have, like, a whole goon squad there of, like, 4 or 5 guys that are just, like, throwaways. And so here's the thing that drove me nuts is that the cops confront these like crooks, and the crooks just open fire.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal.
Just like
it's very
just
much like a
pull out
Dark
guns
Knight
and
kind
they
of.
just start,
Yeah.
They just start shooting They just start shooting directly at the cops.
Now keep in
if
mind you're in a blimp, okay? And we all know what happens when you have like open flames and sources of ignition in blimps. Everything.
Well, I mean, they fixed that problem in 2020.
Oh, that's
so.
good. That's good.
Yeah. So if like, here's the thing, Baron, if you were a cop in this instance and people were like heavily firing on you, what would you do? What would your training as a police officer indicate that you do?
Well, it would definitely, I mean, for me personally, it would involve, some pants shitting, but definitely a lot of, like, taking cover,
Oh, taking
perhaps
cover's great.
some returning of fire.
That is perfect.
You might live
passed.
through the day. Yeah.
You live through the day. What do these cops do? They run at the crooks that are they run directly into the line of fire at the crooks that are shooting at them.
Well, when you got a bulletproof vest.
No, Bulletproof wasn't there. Everybody else, it was Mace and Long Arm, and whatever the other stupid
Doesn't
one was.
matter. Doesn't
Here's the
matter.
thing. At that moment,
None of this
None of
matters.
this matters.
at that moment, I wanted to write my own ending, which this end of the this episode
Epishit
this
is what you were trying to say. It's fine.
This episode should have ended with a 21 gun salute in a cemetery and a bunch of crying wives.
It should have ended with all these cops dead and them trying to like restore order to the city by getting people who knew what the hell they were doing. I agree with you.
Exactly.
It's
Hiring
terrible.
a police force who actually paid attention.
But I got to tell you, so a couple things here. There's, let's see, Long Arm gets to use his cuff, I think like once, to help connect like the blimp to the cops shuttle. So that was cool, I guess. He gets to use his fancy little cuff. Bulletproof.
Finally, my arm comes in use.
Exactly. That's all he did. And then he just
If you have
retired.
to call it a fancy cuff, like it's not. It's not
a
actually
fancy
close. Like,
cuff.
I'm sorry, bud. It's not like you blew it.
The perfect phrase there would have been, my arm comes in handy. Get it?
Man, you could have written for this show quite easily.
I did.
There's a scene where, like,
no.
so Bulletproof, I don't understand how he works and how he functions, because there's a scene where, like, after the fight sequence, he, like, so Sean, you probably remember this better than I do, we were talking about this offline, but there's a scene involving, like, explosives, and I don't understand what happens to him.
Yeah, Bullet. In order to escape the meat locker
Yes.
that Bulletproof and Hardtop are thrown into, Bulletproof like widens his chest, which breaks the ropes that are around him. It widens his cybernetic body,
Yeah.
and it allows him to break the ropes. And then he like reaches into his torso and pulls out what he calls like, I mean, because everybody's had like fireworks, like an M80,
Yeah.
you know, like explosive. Like he pulls out what he calls like an M98.
I think it was 98, so by 2020 they've, yeah.
Yeah.
They
So
evolved
he
fireworks.
puts this M98 on the lock and blows it up. But I mean, you realize like this man's walking around with explosives inside of his chest.
Yep.
Now I know you're probably just like, oh, but he's BP, like he's bulletproof. Yeah, he's bulletproof like in the torso. Like if like something shot him in the chest and it caused that M98 to explode, like
He's
his
done.
internal organs, like it's just no more spine,
He's
jerk.
done.
Like that's you're dead.
And there's a
Like-
point where, like, he just kind of collapses on the floor, and you
A
think
bunch
he's
of
like
people playing taps.
bunch of and you think he's like
It's just
he is down for the count, but you think he's like, I don't know if he's dead, I don't know if he's incapacitated. No, he's still talking and like giving orders and making jokes from the floor. He's just laying down and can't
he
get
gets
out for
thrown, he
whatever
gets thrown
reason.
through a window, and then he's just like, "It's all over, Crusher," and then like falls back down to the ground. Just lay there.
He just lays there. He's tired. He's tired. It's
Do
been a
nothing.
long day of crime fighting time.
The
Man.
main crooks escape, and they grab the wrong bag, which has the sandwiches.
Yeah,
in
remember
it.
those bags from before? Those identical bags, one with
Womp, womp,
millions
womp.
of dollars worth of loot and cash, and one with tens of dollars worth of sandwiches. Guess which one these idiot crooks get? Yeah. Big Boss is not happy about that, and we are not happy about this show because it is not as good as I remember. And these guys are not happy with me because I'm the one that suggested it. But
That's fine.
Well, Dave, if I had a bag of sandwiches,
Yeah.
I'd have to say it wouldn't be all. It wouldn't be a down note.
you want a bag of sandwiches? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I
You
mean,
want to get paid in
you know,
sandwiches?
you
if
can
I gra-
you can message Baron on Twitter at bag of sandwiches, please.
A bag of sandwiches.
I'm changing my username right
Please
now.
do.
Please
Bag of
do.
sandwiches is so good.
Bag of-
Please find the
Bag of-
picture from
bag of
this
sandwiches,
episode.
Baron.
Find the picture from this episode of Crusher just like stuffing his face in the sack of sandwiches at the end, and that's your avatar. Good
You know,
stuff.
you don't think I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it.
Oh man, what you
Please do.
shouldn't do is probably go back and watch the show if you have fond memories. This, like Sean mentioned last week, we're calling it the Voltron effect. We have great memories of this stuff, and then we go back, 20 years later, 25 years later in some cases, and review it, and man, it just does not hold up. Again, I think the theme song, the title sequence is awesome. The roll call is fun. That's all you need to watch. Man, do you guys have any recommendations on maybe some episodes to watch, or just to avoid it altogether?
So I watched one of the other episodes that I really did enjoy was the one called "The Case of the Lowest Crime,"
Oh, boy.
which the lowest crime is evidently selling drugs, which is interesting because this actually puts the cops and the crooks, like they team up in
Yeah.
order to fight a drug dealer that's plaguing Empire City. That they are not, like, the cops are not able to catch this drug dealer who is
Shocking.
named here. But Baron, listen, the name of the frickin' drug dealer is Addictum.
Oh,
And
God.
he's passing out Crystal Twist. He's passing out a drug
Twist.
called Crystal Twist, which looks like a gem that like you hold up to your forehead, and like he's not even like being
Wait a
sly
minute.
about it.
Did you say he was handing out Crystal Pepsi? Because I know it was.
In 1988, probably.
I wish would have been better. But like this Addictum's not even like hiding. Like he walks up to random people on the street and he goes, "Grease my palm with some cash if you'd like some Crystal Twist." And like he's like straight up just like, "Put money in my hand and I'll give you drugs."
Drugs.
And that's like it's so bad that like I was cringing and laughing at the same time. That's what this show made me do. Is it made me laugh and it made me cringe. Like
Yeah.
it just how bad it was. Like, I loved to hate this show.
Well, if you love
So
to
like
hate it so much, you can actually buy both volumes of it, I think, on DVD now. We'll have links and stuff up on our website for that.
or be a crook and just torrent them for free.
But then the cops will come after you.
No, they won't.
Yeah,
You'd show them this show and they'd just be like, oh, that's justifiable. Like, trust me, this statement that I just made, that'll hold up in court.
Baron, did you get a chance to check out any other episodes? Anything you want to recommend or tell them to steer clear of?
Actually, I watched The Lowest Crime as well.
Oh, you watched that one too? Nice.
Yeah. So, I mean, I have to say, between the two, like The Blimp and The Lowest Crime, I mean, it wasn't as, the worst thing we've watched so far.
Another ringing endorsement from Saturday Morning Cartoons.
I mean, it wasn't the worst thing we've watched so far.
On the Denver scale, where does this rank?
Okay, if 1 is Denver and 10 is Exo Squad,
all right.
I'd say we're kind of at we're at a 4.5.
Where the hell does Botsmaster come in?
Like 2.
So yeah.
Okay, that's fair.
Like 1.
I'll stick with that.
Okay.
Like 0.5. So, at any
I
rate.
love this scale. This is my favorite scale.
It's a sliding
On a
scale.
1, but
Logarithmic.
this got a 0.5. Like, you went outside the range, buddy.
Good stuff.
Well, anyway. Yeah, so, I mean, Jesus. So, I mean, it's. I kind of thought it was a good series. Like, the writing was terrible,
Yep.
and I mean, it had some really weird, just disconnected ideas and thoughts and scenes, but at the same time,
Logic,
yeah, logic, exactly. But at the same time, I mean, kind of going back to 1988, 1989 me, I could really see why this show was popular.
Oh, yeah.
And looking back at it, it's now I love to hate it, but I could probably watch 10 episodes and not want to kill my TV. But at the same time, it's I'm not going to be happy about watching those 10 episodes.
Yeah. Well,
It's like the homework assignment that teaches you something but takes 5 hours to complete. So
that's probably a good way to describe it. If you guys happen to like the Bowser and Blitz characters, you can watch the Great Prison Break-In. That's an episode that I watched. It's a little bit down the road. If you like Mace in his weird hunting getup and the villainous Lady Nightshade, and you want to see them get together and have a little bit of a woo-woo romance, cops, then you can watch.
Okay, now.
Yeah, another episode titled "The Case of Mace's Romance." That's episode number 35, I think.
Oh, is that where he flips over Nightshade?
I don't think they showed that one on the.
Yeah, that's hot.
Yeah, that's not the G-rated version. I guarantee there is some fan art, some deviant art out there for that.
I'm gonna be tumbling that.
Can you send me a link to that? I need that for research.
For research. It's a little late now since the show is over, and now the show's over.
God.
Oh Lord. Let's do some plugs. Sean, I know you just had your first show, the new improv stuff going on. So why don't you tell the people about that, where they can see you guys?
Hey, I'll be performing next Saturday, July 19th at Source Theater in Washington, D.C. as a part of Washington Improv Theater's Binge Run. I'll be performing at 8 p.m. and you can see me perform with a group called Nox. That's NOX exclamation point.
Excellent.
And you can buy tickets at WashingtonImprovTheater.com.
And we'll have all that info up in the show notes on our website. Matt, do you have anything coming up you want to let the people know about?
Nothing coming up in the next couple weeks, but I do want to get those short runnings up first week of August, so take a look for those. They'll be linked from my Twitter account, which is at MattSF07.
It's actually at Bag of Sandwiches.
07.
And not too much. Is that it for you? Sorry to interrupt you there.
Yeah, that's it.
Excellent.
That's
Excellent.
it.
The only thing really coming up for me, in addition to hosting this podcast, I do write for the entertainment news site Collider.com. We will be heading to San Diego Comic-Con in a couple of weeks here. So if you guys are headed out that way, or if you can't make it and want to check out some of the coverage, be sure to head over to Collider.com and see all we have to offer you. We'll see if there's a Cops reunion happening. Probably not, but I can always cross my fingers.
Please no.
If you want to hear
yes.
more about the show and about Cops, you can always head over to our website. That's SaturdayMorningCartoons.com. That's morning with a U. You can also check us out on Twitter at MorningTunes. Sean's been doing a good job over at our Tumblr page. There might be some weird hentai stuff coming up there soon. It'll probably be taken down just as quick, so you got to be quick and check it out. That's at SaturdayMorningCartoons.tumblr.com. Let's see. Anything else we got there? I think
You
that's
can
about
find me
it.
on Twitter at Sean Paul Ellis, and same on Instagram at Sean Paul Ellis.
And Matt, you gave the guys your info, but you want to give it to them one more time in case they weren't listening?
At MattSF07, potentially, if it's available, at Bag of Sandwiches 07.
God, I hope it is so
Hope it
much.
is.
Bag of
So
sandwiches.
good.
You can find me at Dr. Claw MD. This was our 9th episode, which means the next one, if I can do math correctly, or if I'm using Matt's scale of rating the show, the next episode is our 10th, and we're doing a little bit of a special thing. We all kind of agreed that one show we definitely want to revisit, might as well do it sooner than later, Pirates of Dark Water. Now, I'm hoping we don't have the Voltron effect on this one, because I fondly
No,
remember
you
the
tot.
show. No, you tot, you tot monkey bird. It's so good. It's so good. I hope it's so good. I don't know, guys. I haven't watched it in years, but we'll see. What do you
I'm
guys?
nervous. I'm very nervous.
I did watch the intro opening scene this weekend,
Still good?
and it's so great. Like it's exactly as I remember it, which means the show is just going to be in the shitter and just all wrong.
I
So
really hope not, but you'll have to come back and join us, listen to us next time when we talk about it on Saturday morning cartoons. Thanks for listening. Made things, but was the creator and director for the Eon Flux series. So when you go to look at Cops and you look at the characters, they have sort of these like weird angles on their faces and just like very just kind of like stark expressions on their faces. Big eyes, very, very characteristic of his animation style. And you can see that again in Eon Flux. It's not quite as angular as that, but
And I mean, like, I love Peter Chung's work. I mean, Ian Flux on Liquid Television on
Yep.
MTV in the '90s was just incredible. And then he did a bit on the Animatrix,
right.
And he also did like the Chronicles of Riddick like animated movie that serves as like a segue between like the
Yeah, like the
between
interstitial
like
chapters.
Pitch Black
Yeah.
and Chronicles of Riddick, called Dark Fury, which is phenomenal to watch. Like I love it, but man, Peter Chung, like you made a mistake, buddy. Like you are an amazing artist, but not everybody is perfect.
Well,
And
look,
this is
I'll tell you what.
terrible proof positive.
I'll give him props for the opening title sequence, which is pretty badass, and it ran obviously for the the show's 65 episodes. So that was pretty memorable, and we'll talk about it. But as for what the show is actually about, I'm going to turn it over to Matt, who's going to give you a little bit of background.
okay, so the synopsis, and Dave, the tagline you
Oh,
sent
yeah.
out: fighting crime in a future time,
It's,
protecting Empire City from Big Boss and his gang of crooks.
and that future time's
I mean-
coming up, 2020, y'all.
I know, and that's what kind of geeks me out. I was like, oh God, 6 years. Like everything's going to be terrible 6 years from now. Like there's going to be bad animation. The plots are going to take a turn for the worse.
Everybody's going to be a terrible trope of a police officer.
It's just going to be like a really like low budget rendition of like Blade Runner. I feel like,
We're headed in that direction.
great.
So says
So
Cops.
anyway.
Yeah.
So then,
It's a really quick and easy name that their name describes exactly what they do and exactly what they look like. So it's kind of fun. So you want to go through some of the hero cops first, starting with, as Baron mentioned, Mr. Vess. V-E-S-S, Vess.
Baldwin Bulletproof Vest.
Oh, yeah. Bulletproof Vess, everyone.
I think the thing. I mean, the
Sets
thing
the
that
bar.
the thing,
Wait a minute. I literally just got that. Holy
Are
crap.
you
Oh,
serious?
come on.
Jesus, dude.
Sorry.
Well, while Baron collects his thoughts, maybe Sean will tell us why he's named Bulletproof Vest, other than the obvious pun, or not so obvious pun.
Got a cybernetic torso that allows him to walk or some crap.
Yeah,
I
makes
don't know.
no sense.
You
Again,
know,
cartoon
it's-
logic. I don't know why your torso is needed to help you walk. Spine, I get. Spine makes sense. Legs,
So like if you're,
perhaps.
yeah, but I mean, maybe spine. Who knows? Doesn't matter. I think the thing that's key with this is that like there are a bunch of different like cops of these specialized cops.
Yes.
And like if you're super interested in learning all about them, either Google them or just watch to the end of the episode and they do like a major roll call
I
and
love
go
that.
through what everybody is, because there's just so many, like there's so many characters that they have for this. They also do like a whole roll call of all the different crooks
Yep.
that are on it too. So like if you're really super interested, but just looking at this episode, the only people that like you need to really concern yourself with are Bulletproof, Long Arm.
Who's probably my favorite.
I don't like any of them.
Yeah, I know you don't like
I
any.
really just.
So-
I love
take it
his
back.
name though.
Yeah.
I think I like a hard top, and I'll explain
God
why.
damn, how could you? Okay.
I'll explain why later. All right, so Long Arm is supposed to be like a beat cop. He's got like this like grappling hook, kind of like a bionic
Yeah,
commando
he's got
thing.
the long arm of the law, my friends.
dumb.
The long arm of the law. It's a power cuff. So it's like a handcuff grappling hook combined. And there's one scene in a later episode where there's two of these cops side. Hello and welcome to Saturday Morning Cartoons, the weekly podcast that revisits, reviews, and ridicules some of the world's weirdest animated series. I'll be your host, Dave Trumbore. Joining me today from the Washington, D.C. 5-0, Sean Paul Ellis. What's going on?
David. I'm great. How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. And the Naco from the Bay Area is Matt Barron. What's up, Matt?
David. I'm just copying Sean.
Yeah, you can't do that. You can't just copy his intro, man. Come on now. You can be arrested for that in some states.
Ooh, here we go.
Yep, we're getting into it.
Right with the Central Cops theme. Wonderful.
There's really not too much I can do to tie into this. So, today, we are talking the 1988-89 DIC, or DiC, entertainment series, Cops. Now,
I feel like Deke should have been arrested for this.
Sean is getting off to an early start here with his disdain for this show. Now, I feel kind of bad because I suggested this one this week. From my childhood, I thought this one was pretty good. As we get into this one, we will reveal that it is not. So this is one of those shows that we revisit, and it is not as good as we remember.
I have to say, I kind of love to hate it.
Well, that's
Like
good.
it was
too.
bad in
I will
like
agree
a
with that.
funny way.
I
Yeah.
will 100% agree with it. Like, it was so off the wall bad that I was just like, I was enthralled to just see how many inaccuracies and just how poorly it was done, which just blew my mind. That like, holy crap! Like, there are so many episodes of this stupid show.
Yeah, and we should say right off the bat that don't confuse this with the reality TV series Cops. With the
I
Bad
kind of
Boys
wish we had.
Dude, the funniest thing, and we can get into this in the history, the funniest thing is that this animated show actually came first. It was like about a year or so ahead of the reality series. But then when the reality series got more and more popular, they had to change the name of the cartoon, obviously. So a couple years later, when it went into syndication, they changed it to Cyber Cops. So you might have seen it, same exact show. They just syndicated it as Cyber Cops.
Just same terrible
Terrible show.
show.
But we're going to get into that in a second. Let me give you guys a little bit of history. Like I said, it was 1988 and 89 series. It was then syndicated in 1993 for CBS Saturday Morning Cartoons block, which fits in pretty well with the program here. COPS is an acronym. We all love acronyms. This one stands for Central Organization of Police Specialists. That's about as generic as you can get, I think. But
Can I ask a question? Like, did anybody else hear them say that like during the theme song and think to yourself like, oh my god, is that really what cops means? Like, is it? Have I just thought that it was like a
when I
word
heard
all
that,
the time and I didn't realize it was an acronym? Like, am I stupid?
When I heard that, I also thought, oh my god, some police department is actually using this in real life. Like, this is happening right now.
yeah, very much so. I don't know why they felt
to answer my question, I'm not stupid. This show is stupid.
Yeah, the show is very stupid. But everything in like the late 80s had to be anachronized.
An acronym?
An anachronistic acronym. Wow. Yeah, pretty bad. So it also has a toy line tie-in. It was tied into the Hasbro Cops and Crooks series. So that's where a lot of these bizarro characters come from, which we'll get into. That's actually probably why I remember this show fondly, because I just remember the characters and not any of the dialogue or plot or ridiculousness that was in the show itself. But yeah, there it is. One cool thing for fans of animation, especially fans of the show Aeon Flux, which we will probably talk about someday because I think it's still fairly obscure for a lot of people. South Korean artist by the name of Peter Chung was actually responsible for the character design, the opening title direction, which I love, and then also supervised the overseas animation on Cops. Did a number of other
Nexus 6 situation, but I digress. So yeah, it was year 2020, place Empire City. So basically, the Mayor Davis requests federal assistance from the FBI, which I thought was a little weird. Like, if you're gonna, make this in the 2020 future, especially from writing this in 1989,
Right.
you should have there has to be something better than the FBI 40 years in the future if it's 1989. But it was. I mean, basically, it was a focusing on Special Agent Baldwin Vess, and I mean, it was just basically cops, except instead of reality TV show, it was an acronym. So.
Yeah, but it was also just like crazy cybernetically enhanced, like biosuit cops kind of thing. Not as crazy as like Exo Squad or stuff that we've seen, but and not like a RoboCop, but pretty close. Yeah.
You know what it kind of reminded me of was 8-Man a little bit.
What is that?
I mean, it was if you remember on Saturday Anime on the Sci-Fi Channel, like back in the 90s, it was a lot of like cybernetic enhancement, not really Ghost in the Shell style, but sort of the same umbrella. It kind of reminded me of that. Like the animation style was similar, so.
This to me would be like if you explained what the idea was for Ghost in the Shell, and then someone pretended to understand it, and then just made a show.
Yeah, this was Ghost in the Shell.
Yeah, somebody walked in halfway through and said, "Oh, I got that. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sure.
Stuff right now.
Yeah, that's great. So we should probably get into some of these characters because their names say it all. And like we've talked about on past shows, for like 80s characters, their names, at some point, they don't even try. Whoever's dreaming up these characters, they don't even try. It's just for dumb kids.